am Brittany, the Cosmic Lunar Soul. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to all of my subscribers. Today is going to be a little bit of an expansion of my spicy science video. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead, check that in the link below. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get into it. So you might be wondering what all this is about based off of the thumbnail and the title, and I kind of want to tell a little bit of a story about how I got into witchcraft and my relationship with religion. Well, I explained, I think, in a previous Tarot Time live stream and in a few of my previous videos, but long story short, I have a very, tumultuous, I'll call it, or very up and down relationship with religion. There are times in my life where I was fine with being around it and it doesn't bother me. It still doesn't bother me, but there's also points in my life where I'm just vehemently against inviting anything like that into my life. And I'm kind of going through that phase now. So when I was discovering witchcraft and kind of finding my footing, like a lot of new witches, I was introduced to Scott Cunningham and all of his books. While I love his resources, I talk about that in my Witchy Resources live stream. I don't really care too much for his beginner book that everybody kind of gives to new witches. And that's because it was objectively, I mean, it's in the title, it is a very Wiccan book. So very early on, I kind of felt a little, I felt like maybe witchcraft wasn't for me if this is what it was going to be about. And it took me maybe a few other books to realize, oh, okay, there's just a lot of Wiccan influence, but I don't need to partake in any of that in order to actually practice witchcraft. So it took longer than I feel like it should have. And it's no one's fault, really, but it's just kind of how things are intertwined. I mean, in the time of Scott Cunningham, it makes a lot of sense, but it definitely kind of put a little bit of a break on my forward momentum in terms of discovering myself and discovering witchcraft. I guess in hindsight, I'm a little happy for it because I know exactly what it is I want, what I don't want. I know what my boundaries are, and I do think that's important. One of the things that also helped me was joining communities, but communities are kind of a double-edged sword. So, in joining communities, you find out that almost all of them, I mean, I would say all of them, but I feel like that's not how the world works, but almost all of them are extremely pagan. Now, if you're new to witchcraft, people have slightly varying definitions for pagan, but my definition is basically it's an umbrella term for religions that don't fall into what I call the big three. So if you're not Christian, Muslim, or Jewish, or, somewhere in that big three, then you fall into pagan. So that means you have some sort of relationship with a deity or deities. You have some sort of concept of divine that is an actual personification, I guess, which is still another way to describe deities in my opinion. And I just don't jive with that at all. So it was really annoying to be labeled as pagan. And very early on, I was just like, don't call me that. Now, if you know me at all, I don't like labels to begin with. So that's why that's probably why I was very vocal about not wanting to be called pagan. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just it doesn't match with how I feel about myself. And I appreciate when people don't do that. So that really made me drive to find secular communities, or at least secular bubbles within a community. And I found a few, and of course, guys, I'm going to put all of the resources in the description box as I'm talking about them, so feel free to click on them and check them out. But one of the big things about witchcraft is secular, but it doesn't feel secular. So, yes, technically it is, but when you're immersed in these communities, when you're getting books that refer to the triple goddess or the god and the goddess and stuff like that, it feels very not secular. It feels very religious. And even though people were saying this, it wasn't matching with what I was feeling. So, enter this video. I'm hoping that I can help shine a little light on just what to do that's a little more secular than what people might suggest to you as a new witch, or if you are transitioning out of the non-secular into secular, then hopefully this can kind of help you out a little bit. So basically what I want to do is explain. It's really easy. I want to explain what secular witchcraft is to me. It might be a little different for everyone, but hopefully in me explaining this, it helps give you an idea of what kind of footing you want, what kind of foundation you want for your practice. So the really basic answer is basically secular witchcraft is just witchcraft that's not tied to any kind of religion. So you don't rely on any kind of divine, any kind of goddess, god, deity, whatever you want to call it. But what does that actually mean, right? So the easy one is it means deities aren't present in your practice. You don't call on deities to help give you power. You don't call on deities to help you with this, that, and the other. You don't pray to them. Now, if you do this separately, that's fine, but it's just in terms of your witchcraft, just to keep that in mind. So that doesn't mean that you can't believe in them. It just means that you don't rely on them for your practice. So I do want to differentiate for you guys. And basically, this all boils down to emphasizing a personal power. So this is saying that you have your own power, you have your own will that you are putting out into the universe. If you saw my spicy science video, you know that I do believe in other things that help us, but it's not a deity, it's not something divine, it's something tangible and not tangible, but sometimes tangible. But the reason I like this is because secular witchcraft gives a lot of power and autonomy to oneself. And I feel like a lot of religions, and especially people that are coming from like religious trauma or something like that, it feels very empowering to do that, to feel like I caused this. It wasn't because I prayed to someone else and they did it for me. So having that autonomy is really important to me. And if it's important to you, maybe this is something that is a little more up your alley than you realized. I also like that secular witchcraft can be very variable. It can change based off of your needs. This isn't to say that it's like what people call eclectic witchcraft. I just mean that there's a practicality behind what you do based off of what you need. It's not like, oh, I need to light this candle for Freya because I haven't done it in a while. You know what I mean? It's more so, I'm going to light this candle for prosperity because I am about to apply for a new job and I want to give myself a little boost. See the difference? Now, that leads me into what I was kind of hinting at earlier is like what I guess I'll consider them the foundations of secular witchcraft. And this is where you start to form your actual belief system. Now, this is like, if this were a religion, this would say, oh, I believe in God, or I believe in the Holy Trinity, that's that kind of stuff. But in secular witchcraft, what is it you believe that gives the power, or what are other things other than oneself that you think you can get power from? So for me, I try to stick with more sciencey or psychology. I guess it's still a science. Various sciences and psychology kind of things. One of the big ones is using symbology. I don't know what I was just about to say instead of that, but I could barely pronounce that word. Um, I think symbology is really a crux of just human nature. That's why humans are able to identify traffic signs in other countries. And that's why we're able to identify animals that might be a little dangerous versus the ones that aren't. And I think that incorporating that into our practice, or I should say, me incorporating this into my practice is really important because it helps me focus a little more, and it gives meaning and structure because I like that. I thrive off of structure, if you haven't noticed. I'm sure if you've seen any more than just this video, you probably noticed that I really like structure. But symbolism doesn't have to stop at just like shapes or colors. So, you've seen a lot of stuff about color correspondences. There are shape correspondences. There's also just things that are traditional to your culture. Um, so, color correspondences can change based off of your culture. For instance, in the US, red is like passion and energy and stuff like that. It can sometimes represent death as well. But then in other countries, death is maybe the predominant correspondence of red. And then I think in Asian countries or certain Asian countries, red can also represent prosperity. Whereas here, green and maybe gold are more prosperity. So the correspondences, the symbolism, that can all vary based off of where you are, what your background is, just your lived experiences. And I think that's really cool. It helps shape the practice to be more you, and it molds it into something that's more important and ultimately impactful. I also mentioned psychology. So, a lot of my practice was created based off of the need for like improving my mental state at the time. So it's kind of like a type of therapy in a way of just changing my life around. And I still incorporate those things to this day. Symbology kind of hints at this a little bit because it's how your brain responds to external stimuli, for example. But honestly, psychology is a really common thing that most witches incorporate into their practice, whether they realize it or not. So this probably isn't a hard sell for a lot of you guys. For example, mindfulness and affirmations are huge right now. Not everybody who does this is a witch, but it's very easy to make those things witchy. So if you have an affirmation, and this is kind of where you can combine symbology and psychology. If you have an affirmation, say, I am in control of my day. That's my affirmation. I can turn that into a sigil, or I can scribe that onto a candle and burn it. There's so many different ways to make them witchy. I can write it on a petition, add some herbs in that, whatever, that connect with that in some kind of way, that match the correspondences, and put it in a little sachet and carry it around with me to give me confidence and strength throughout the day. So there's so many ways that you can incorporate very common psychological principles and practices and make them witchy. And they are obviously secular as well. This last one, I kind of combine the two, but they're my favorites. Energy is really the core of my practice. I feel like everything is a type of energy. So I'm going to combine that with the concept of nature as well, just because of the way that I do my practice. So for me, herbs are really, really big in my practice. You can see some, hanging above my head right here, that I've grown and dried. I don't claim to be a green thumb, but I try my best. And I love using herbs. It's very rare that I do a spell or a ritual or anything like that that does not incorporate herbs in some kind of way. So I think the energy that nature can provide to us is really important to me. You'll have to let me know in the comments if nature is important to you, and if so, in what way. So with that being said, I think that being able to rely on actual things that I know give off energy or intake energy and absorb certain things makes more sense to me, because it's kind of like, you know, the laws of conservation of energy. If I can take something, combine them, it should give off some other thing. It's like chemistry, which was really fun, by the way. I loved chemistry. Inorganic chemistry. I never had to take organic, so my mind might change if I had to. But I feel like if you are using energy as one of the foundations of your practice, things make more sense. So I mentioned nature, but I also like to use celestial energy. So I mean, you see a lot of people suggesting to make moon water. That is a form of secular practice that utilizes celestial energy in order to use in your practice. So I like to work off the energy of the moon phases. I'm learning about the planets and stuff like that, but there is scientific evidence of how the moon affects the planet and therefore affects us. So, and then of course we can actually test the levels of the energy that we get from the sun. So these are real things. I don't want to say tangible, but these are scientifically proven things that just because we don't understand the full extent of them doesn't mean we can't use them now. One of my favorite quotes is just, magic is science we don't understand yet. And that is really what helped me form the foundations of my practice. And that's why energy is a huge part of it. That, and my background is in engineering. So it's very much my little comfort box. So when you have a secular practice, I feel like people's ethics are a little different. And I don't want to get too far into this. I have a whole another video about ethics in witchcraft, and you can watch that if you want. But knowing that you are at fault for anything you do, whether that's good or bad, will change what you decide to do. Now, everybody has different levels of morals, different levels of ethics. It depends on your society and stuff like that, and how you were raised and whatever. But I think that this just shows that going back to what I was talking about before, since you're in control, you can't put the blame on anyone but yourself. And I think that's important in life in general. You know, maybe I'm wrong, who knows, but I've been known to be wrong once or twice in my life. But I think that this can lead to a practice that really relies on consent and, you know, understanding and patience. And a lot of that is kind of what I wanted to invite in my life. But not to say that everybody, you don't have to do things exactly like I do. Maybe you should, but no, I'm kidding. But I did just kind of want to hint at that. If you want more on that discussion, I already have a video on that. So I kind of gave hints throughout the video, and I think this might be better in a video all on its own, but this kind of all leads me to the practical side of secular witchcraft. So I mentioned that psychology is one of the foundations. Nature and energy is another foundation, symbolism, right? But when you combine all those things, what does that merge into? Well, I kind of gave the hint of combining psychology and symbolism to create like sigils, combining energy and psychology to do candle magic. So combining these correspondences, all of this kind of round up into that. And that can really shape how you structure your rituals and your spell work. I really do think this should be its own video, so I won't go too much further into that, but I feel like I already gave some really nice tips and kind of hinted at some really good ideas on how to do that. And I'd rather sit and formulate this out a little better so it makes more sense instead of my incoherent rambling like I tend to do. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the communities and resources. Now, remember in the beginning of this video, I talked about how they helped, but they hurt a little bit, and I think it was because I didn't understand that these were options to me. So, and by these I mean that secular witchcraft was an option for me. So hopefully this video helps you find that community that you're looking for. And I do have resources in the description box. I have a no, I have two Reddit communities. I know it's Reddit, but I swear they're actually really informative, really cool, and have a lot of different perspective on things. One is a witchcraft community. It's the SAS Witchcraft, and then I have the secular tarot community. I know I've mentioned before I don't really consider tarot witchcraft, but I do know a lot of people use tarot, and that is another thing that I want to talk about going forward. So I'm adding that into the resources. The SAS Witchcraft actually has a whole list of ongoing just resources and stuff. So books, videos, podcasts, stuff like that. So anything that you might need. And if there's something that seems a little outdated or whatever, you can always just join and ask them. Just say you went through the list and you were wondering if anybody has any others, any other ideas or suggestions. And then also a few YouTubers that I really like. The Skeptical Witch is one. I feel like that's an obvious choice. The Witch's Cookery, I really love her videos. In fact, I'm going to link one below that kind of explains paganism and witchcraft in more detail than I really felt like going into, because she does such a great job at it. And then Taya Kennedy, she is actually one of the smaller, I say smaller, she's bigger than me, but she's like so sweet. I love her videos, and she likes to put out she does a lot of the tags. So it's really cool to see her story. She's definitely more of the like folk side of things. I don't consider myself so folky, but I really love to hear her perspective, and we have a lot of crossover. So if you enjoyed this video, I think you might enjoy a lot of hers as well. And yeah, so I hope this video wasn't just some crazy incoherent rambling, especially because I have my notes in front of me. But I hope this helps if you are trying to find your footing as a secular witch, but it's really hard to navigate through the sea of pagans. Then I hope this helps give you an idea of what to look for, where to start, and maybe ways to try some things out. Even if it doesn't work for you 100%, if it just kind of gets your foot in the door, it's really easy from there to kind of build your own momentum for what you need for your craft. So if you enjoyed this video, I appreciate a like, hit the subscribe button and that notification bar, and check out my other videos so you can get a better picture of what I've been talking about. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.